Right now, the AI you're talking to is picking the wrong tool for the job, and it has no idea it's doing it. Let me explain what I mean. When you ask ChatGPT or Claude or any large language model to do something complex, like analyze a spreadsheet, run a calculation, or fetch real-time data, it doesn't actually do those things itself. Instead, it has to pick a tool. It might choose a calculator, a code executor, a search function, or a database query. Sounds smart, right? The problem is, these models are making those choices based on a process that's fundamentally broken, and we're only now starting to realize how badly. Here's the core issue. Large language models predict the next word. That's literally all they do. They're statistical engines trained on billions of words, and they've gotten really good at predicting what word should come next in a sequence. But picking the right tool isn't a word prediction problem. It's a reasoning problem. And reasoning requires understanding context, constraints, and consequences in a way that pure pattern matching just doesn't capture. When an AI model decides to use a tool, it's not actually thinking through the problem. It's pattern matching to similar situations it saw in training data. If the training data had examples of people using a calculator for financial problems, the model learns that association. But if the problem is slightly different, if it requires a different kind of calculation, or if multiple tools could work and one is more efficient, the model has no real way to reason through which one is actually best. It just picks based on statistical likelihood. This is where it gets catastrophically wrong. Researchers have found that AI models will confidently choose the wrong tool and then fail at the task without ever reconsidering their choice. They'll use a calculator when they should use a database query. They'll call a search function when they should process local information. They'll chain tools in illogical orders. And because they're so fluent and confident in their outputs, users often don't notice until something breaks. One study looked at what they call tool hallucination, where models invent tools that don't exist or use real tools in ways that make no sense. In some cases, the models were so committed to their wrong choice that they'd generate fake error messages to justify why the tool didn't work rather than switching to the right one. They're not lying on purpose. They're just continuing the pattern they started because backing up and reconsidering would break the coherence of the response. The real danger here isn't that AI is dumb. It's that AI is confidently wrong in ways that feel authoritative. If a model picks the wrong tool but explains its reasoning in perfect, fluent English, you might trust it. You might build a system on top of it. And then downstream, in production, it fails in ways that are hard to predict. Why is this happening? Because tool selection requires explicit reasoning. You need to consider the properties of the problem, the capabilities of each tool, the constraints of your situation, and then make a deliberate choice. Current language models don't do that. They generate a sequence of tokens that sounds like reasoning, but it's really just completing a pattern. They can fake the appearance of thought without doing the actual cognitive work. Some teams are trying to fix this. They're building what's called a tool router, a separate model or layer that looks at the problem and explicitly decides which tool to use, rather than letting the language model guess. Others are adding what they call chain-of-thought prompting, where you force the model to explain its reasoning step by step before picking a tool, which sometimes helps it avoid the worst mistakes. But these are band-aids on a deeper problem. The deeper problem is that we're using the wrong architecture for this job. Language models are incredible at generating human-like text, but routing and tool selection is a different kind of task. It requires something closer to planning, and planning requires a different kind of model, one that can actually represent alternatives, evaluate them, and make explicit choices. Here's what this means for you right now. If you're using AI to do anything that involves multiple steps or tool use, anything beyond pure text generation, you need to be suspicious. You need to check the work. You need to ask the AI to explain why it picked the tool it did, and then verify that explanation makes sense. Don't assume the AI is smarter than it is. And if you're building products with AI, especially products where tool use is critical, you can't just let the model choose. You need explicit logic, explicit routing, explicit verification. The fluency of modern AI is seductive. It makes you feel like it's thinking, but it's not. It's pattern matching at scale. And pattern matching is going to pick the wrong tool, confidently, until we build something better. The good news is that people are aware of this now. There's real research happening on how to make AI tool use more reliable. But we're not there yet. So until we are, stay skeptical. Don't trust the confidence. Trust the verification. If you want to actually understand how AI breaks and why it fails in ways that sound smart but aren't, subscribe. I break down these kinds of gaps between hype and reality every few days. And this is the stuff that actually matters when you're using these tools in the real world.